Kia ora koutou katoa. Let's go back in time to the birth of the internet. I know, some of you nerds out there are already like, nah, I was dialing up a BBS when you were still in nappies. But for most people, this or something like it was how they came to experience the internet for the first time as it began to go mainstream. Your starting point or your front door to the into the net depended a little bit on where you began. It might have been a university homepage, or Yahoo's front page, or if you were in Aotearoa at a certain point of time, the extra front page. And all of these starting points had something in common, a sort of top-down taxonomy. Where do you want to begin your journey on the information superhighway? Is it news? Is it business? Events? A galaxy of possibilities that actually just felt a little bit more like sections of the newspaper or areas in the library. Let's check out what the New York Times had to say in 1993. Click the mouse and you're watching a NASA weather movie. Click it again and a speech by President Clinton. Digital music compiled by MTV. And a small snapshot reveals whether a certain coffee pot at the University of Cambridge is empty or full. It's a quaint vision now, pastoral, idyllic, like reading about a lovely little country village when we live here now. And the social heart of that village was Usenet. For the Gen Z in the audience, you can think of Usenet as a kind of proto-Reddit, the bastard love child of email and a bulletin board. And it was in these Usenet news groups that you could gather with other people who shared your interests, whether that was film, television, books, science, technology, hobbies. And this is where I made my first home on the internet, in the X-Files fandom. And this was my first experience with what we call transformative fandom, a community of fans who don't just consume media, but debate it, reimagine it, write stories and create art about it, who expand its universe. And I realized that it was in these earliest online communities that internet culture was born. And to begin with, a lot of online etiquette was dictated by form. Posts needed to be concise, to be readable. Long email signatures were annoying. Posting large files or binaries where they would clog up people's newsreaders was downright rude. Prior to 1993, the internet was the domain of the relatively tech-savvy, university students and researchers. And that all changed in September 1993, when AOL gave its massive user base access to Usenet. And the influx of new users overwhelmed the existing community's abilities to teach them the ropes. What came to be known as Eternal September marked a permanent shift in online interaction. So Usenet communities had to work out ways to make the experience work for new and old users alike. So they would come up with lists of answers to frequently asked questions, that's where it comes from, hosted on a member's website as a kind of cheat sheet for helping new users not look clueless. And so the characteristics of this pre-web era was that it was user-created. These groups were formed and made by the communities that were interested in them. It was self-governing. The groups came up with their own norms, rules, and expectations. It was community-driven. It was all about gathering together around shared interests. And it was decentralized. There were no corporate landlords. Now, was it utopian? No. It was small, homogenous, and very hard to get around. In 1994, there were around 10,000 websites and 2,500 web servers. That's fewer than the number of people who live in Redfern. You could buy books, physical directories, because it still made sense to have an offline map of the online world. Search engines were still years away from making anything findable, and so we relied on hand-curated directories of interesting links maintained by individuals. Jean Armapoli, the librarian who coined the phrase surfing the internet, said that she liked the metaphor because, like the sport, it required skill, patience, and a sense of adventure. I was a baby lawyer in the 1990s, and I took my job very seriously. So you can imagine how twitchy it made me when every X-Files story I read started with a lengthy disclaimer begging not to be sued. And it turned out that a lot of that anxiety had to do with Anne Rice. The novelist's books had always been popular, but Interview with the Vampire rose to new prominence with the 1994 movie adaptation starring Tom Cruise. And Anne Rice had always been really clear that she was opposed to fan fiction about her characters. She said, "I'm very possessive of my characters. I think it would hurt me terribly to read something about my characters. I hope you will be inspired to write your own stories." By 2000, she was sending cease and desist letters to fans, a move that was later copied by 20th Century Fox in relation to The Simpsons and The X-Files, and Warner Brothers in relation to sexually explicit Harry Potter fan fiction. And for the fans involved, they caved. Lacking the resources to do anything about it, they would take their stories down. And now we're used to corporations wielding takedown notices and cease and desists. But back in the early 90s, this was much more confrontational and frightening. And it represented a new tension between commercial content producers who wanted to leverage the power of the internet to harness new fans, but didn't want those fans doing whatever they wanted online. Writing about the then-dubbed war on fandom in Hotwired in 1997, Steve Silberman said, "Both the fans and the media companies want to cheat a little bit. The media companies want to parade their internet savvy in the marketplace and funnel all of the traffic into a handful of commercial sites, whereas the fans want to have freedom of speech and assembly on sites of their own choosing." So the first thing that you should know about fans is that we will do whatever we like with your characters. The second thing you should know about fans is that we're horny. Actually, that's probably the one thing you already know, because fans are often reduced to cliches of weirdos who write explicit stories about Kirk and Spock in the 70s. But actually, transformative fandom has a really long, proud history of exploring relationships that are never seen on the page or the screen, like Captain Marvel and Valkyrie, Draco Malfoy and Harry Potter, Betty and Veronica, and those old guys in the conclave. And what are two things that advertisers hate? Infringing IP and explicit content. So from the beginning, fandom didn't sit easily with the idea of a corporate-controlled internet. So we made our own spaces, archives to host our stories and our art, forums in which we could discuss books, TV shows, and movies, and we made our own websites. This is my first website. It's got some sweet tables. It was a place to host my West Wing fan fiction. And so here's some things that you should know about this site. My friends taught me how to do this. I didn't go to a Learn to Code camp. I didn't have a book of HTML. I did use a lot of view source back when that was still something that was useful. And I did it because I wanted control over the things that I had made. I wanted control over my stories, the ability to amend them or delete them if I needed to. And these motivations were fundamental in fan communities. Everything was DIY. We were making our own spaces. There was a real focus on peer-to-peer teaching and learning. We wanted a sense of control over the art we'd created, and we wanted a sense of permanence. We wanted to know that it wasn't going to disappear. So in the early 2000s, the Usenet mailing list era evolved into Web 2.0. And as fans, we moved from Yahoo groups, and we landed on sites like LiveJournal and Tumblr, both darlings of the Web 2.0 era. And the buzzwords of that era were all about user-generated content, interoperability, open data, but the demon of capitalism was bearing down on us all. David Karp, the founder of Tumblr, criticizing YouTube, said, "They take your creative works, your film that you poured hours and hours of energy into, and they put ads on top of it. They make it as gross an experience to watch your film as possible. I'm sure it will contribute to Google's bottom line. I'm not sure it will inspire any creators." And look where we are now. As venture capital and advertising revenue became the drivers, fans were often the first ones thrown under the bus, along with marginalized groups, activists, and survivors, because it takes time and resources to determine whether something that has been flagged as offensive on your platform ought to be removed. For fans, that came to a head in 2007 with what came to be known as strike-through, a mass banning of hundreds of fan journals on LiveJournal on the grounds of a moral panic about explicit content. And it led directly to the creation of an archive of our own. Fans were aware that the transgressive nature of transformative works was always going to be at odds with platforms who wanted to derive revenue from advertising and who were unwilling or unable to defend content on their platform from complaints and threats. An archive of our own is a central hosting site for transformative fan work, stories, art, pubfic, and so on. It's a non-profit, it's built and run entirely by fan volunteers, and it currently hosts over 14 million fan works and has over 8 million registered users. Fans have always been acutely aware of digital impermanence, a problem that the rest of the world is just now starting to realize might be a bit of a problem. Fans have long been the canary in the coal mine. Platforms don't want your infringing IP and they don't want your explicit content, but they might want Nazis if they pay the bills. So we find ourselves in these walled gardens, monitored by surveillance capitalism and incentivized to perform engagement through rage. But nobody needs another "the internet is bad" talk. We all know that the utopian vision didn't exactly come to pass. But, as Molly White wrote recently, the good internet is still out there, just outside the walls. She said the walled enclosures that crowded out much of that acre of developed land still reside within an infinite expanse of possibility. There are no limits to the web. If it has borders, they're ever expanding. We may feel as though we're trapped in this handful of tiny, crowded, noisy spaces, but it's only because we don't see over the walls. This is what inspired me last year to build my second ever website. It's a single-serve site that enables you to plan a new layout for your Lego city. This is my Lego city. It's a COVID problem. It got out of hand. Don't talk to me about it. And last year, this website wound up being a finalist for the Tiny Awards, which are awards that exist to celebrate this other web, the one that is small and handmade and isn't trying to sell you anything or monetize anything, but which is instead about people using the digital tools we all have access to make the sorts of small personal experiences that you tend to see in feed. Now, making exactly 2 websites 20 years apart gave me a really unique insight into what's changed for both the better and the worse. In some ways, it's really easy now to put up a website. Squarespace makes everything a template. You can have a slick site. You can have it up in minutes. But unfortunately, they all wind up feeling a little bit the same. What Kyle Chaker calls filter world, where the algorithm has flattened all of our tastes and all of our Airbnbs and coffee shops and interior design has the same soulless, drab feel. Building for the web is easy, and we've forgotten how. And before you tell me that you still remember how, when was the last time that you taught someone in your life how to build something online? I did it last weekend. This is my nephew, Josh. He's a really good football player, and he wants to start coaching other kids. And so he needs a website, and he asked me what service he should sign up for. And I couldn't help but think, why doesn't he make it himself? So we started out with an LLM because I knew if I tried to explain HTML from scratch, his eyes would glaze over. And he asked the LLM for some basic code for a football coaching website, and I showed him how to save it down and open it locally on his machine. You should have seen how his jaw dropped when the index file opened, and how amazed he was when we applied some basic CSS. Within 20 minutes, he was debugging the mistakes that the LLM was making, and boy, was it making mistakes. And within an hour, he had a site that was starting to look and feel like him. Here are some things that were easy about it. The basic code was easy, particularly with a bit of AI coaching. Getting a domain name, super easy, relatively affordable. But here's what was hard: hosting. In the olden days, we all used to get a little bit of free web hosting with our ISPs, but now finding a safe, reliable, affordable web host is really difficult. And when you do, you're confronted with FTP clients and technical jargon, and I had to dredge my brain to remember how to do any of this. So that's my business idea for you, Sunrise: safe, affordable, easy to use, delightful, cute web hosting. You're welcome. All of this is a principle that I learned from Grey's Anatomy, which is a surgical teaching principle called see one, do one, teach one. And fans have had a proud tradition of teaching one another skills, like fan binding, which is the practice of learning bookbinding techniques in order to create physical books out of your digital fiction, or to rebind the books that are your favorites with new and beautiful covers. I learned how to do this over the summer from watching fan tutorials on TikTok and YouTube. What if we applied that principle of see one, do one, teach one to building for the web again? We've ceded our digital agency. Manual processes suddenly feel too hard. Sorry, Fediverse fans. So here are the 3 things that I think we need to change. How we consume online, what it is that we're consuming online, and where we're hanging out online. Let's start with how. It's long past time to turn your back on For You and Recommended and You Might Like and take back control of your scroll. Up until recently, that's been really difficult. It doesn't matter what platform you're on, TikTok, Instagram, Threads, whatever. You're at the mercy of a black box algorithm that's trying to drive the most engagement with a fire hose to your face. We haven't had any ability to curate our own experience. Like a lot of people, I joined Blue Sky when Twitter was acquired. I thought it was nostalgic, but I didn't necessarily think it was the future. I remember saying to several people, whatever comes next isn't going to be a Twitter clone. Now, I'm not so sure. Many of you may have seen Blue Sky CEO Jay Graber at South by recently wearing her World Without Caesars shirt, a swipe at Meta's Zook or Nothing. And the truth is, Blue Sky doesn't want emperors, and they don't want to control your scroll. Old Twitter let you make lists, groups of accounts that you liked to check in on. Blue Sky lets you make entire custom feeds. You can block or mute words or accounts, sure, but what if you don't want to see any links to Amazon, or you want to moderate a certain level of not safe for work content, or you want to see every picture of someone building Lego, or every video of Harry Styles on stage? All of that is possible with a custom feed and more. I've been doing some work with the guys at Graze. It's a no-code feed builder for Blue Sky, and it's really inspiring how powerful this is. Feeds can be opt-in, opt-out, public, private. You can use them for community building, and now with a sponsored content marketplace, the feed curators can receive revenue for the work that they are doing to build community online. It's an entirely different way of thinking about social media. Similarly, Rudy Fraser and the crew at Black Sky are doing extraordinary work with custom feeds by and for Black users. Rudy, speaking at a conference recently, described Blue Sky as a skeuomorphism, which I found really helpful. It looks and feels like Twitter, which is useful for bringing new users across, but we're shortchanging ourselves if we don't take advantage of all of the opportunities that the new infrastructure has to offer. I'm also interested in apps like Tapestry, who bring all of your feeds together in a single place. I don't know if I want to scroll my hockey Tumblr thirst posts alongside US political doom, but I am interested to see where it goes. How we live online needs to change. The second thing we need to change is what it is that we are consuming online. Clive Thompson wrote a great piece a while ago called Rewilding Your Attention, about how we could go back to the idea of strolling around online looking for new and interesting things. My challenge to you today is to take up the banner of re-weirding the web. Fans love weird. We've created entire fake fandoms out of a photo of someone's shoe. This was a picture that was posted on Tumblr. The label on the shoe references a movie called Goncharov, directed by Martin Scorsese, which does not exist. Someone replied to this photo saying, this idiot hasn't seen Goncharov, and away we went. Fans created movie posters and soundtracks. They wrote essays about the key characters and the themes of this movie that no one had ever actually seen. There are 800 fan fictions tagged Goncharov on AO3. Scorsese's daughter even had to text him to ask him about the film. We've been able to make a fandom out of misunderstanding a movie poster. When this poster dropped, everyone looked at it and saw a period piece. You have to actually stare at it for a second to realize that they're wearing contemporary clothes. So Tumblr looked at it and went, sexy historical? Sexy historical. Elizabeth, fed up with Darcy's bullshit, takes matters into her own hands. Sexy Downton Abbey, the poster that launched 1,000 fics. Actually, there are 25 fics tagged Cordelia on AO3. All of them are based on the poster and not the actual movie, and one of them is a Goncharov crossover. We need to take that weirdness everywhere. Here are some things I've just seen in the last month or so that I've enjoyed. Global Caps Lock was a project where you ran a small client on your machine, and whenever anyone else in the world running the client put their caps lock on, it turned on for everybody. This site shows you where your closest pandas are and what they're called. Here are your closest pandas, Sunrise. My friend Erica Hall in the States started painting chickens to deal with like the dumpster fire of everything. And then she thought, what if we went back in time and tried to reset the timeline before Facebook took a terrible turn and used the same interaction, but not with pictures of non-consenting teens? So Clickins was born, and now you can spend a few minutes in your day choosing between pictures of chickens. Take selfies with surveillance. The traffic cam photo booth allows you to find your nearest traffic cam, pop outside, and get your photo taken. This one is quite hard to explain.
Well, another stupid website. It's either the best idea or the worst idea I've ever had. Go to 715-999-7483.com and you'll see a website. Call that same number, 715-999-7483, and you'll hear this.
715-999-7483.com.
And all you have to do is describe exactly what you want the website to be. Make the website crazy with a lot of lights, a lot of colors, make animations go crazy. And in a couple of seconds, it will update. And yeah, that's the site. Make sure you don't update it with like some kind of weird foot fetish.
It's actually remarkably hard to record what you want a website to look like in 30 seconds. I did try for you. What if everyone in this room made something that was small and weird and just for them? Something that solved a problem only they had, or something that just made them smile, or their nephew smile. The final thing I think we need to think about is where we consume, our digital neighborhoods. Everything old is new again, Dig is coming back. But I also think we need to come up with genuinely new ways to approach this. We didn't know we needed Twitter when it was built. Remember when it was just the app for posting a sandwich and not for dismantling democracy? I love this post about how everybody has a newsletter now. I too have a newsletter, but my weekly posts look more like Harry Styles, the International Space Station, what the Hot Firefighter show can teach you about modern media, and some Lego. We need to stop thinking about audience and reach and start thinking about discovery again when AI-generated content has destroyed search. My friend calls this the Lambton Key problem. And it's when you drop down in a new city that you've never been to before, and you're standing on the official main street, which in Wellington is Lambton Key, and it's soulless and extremely dead, and you know somewhere nearby is the cool neighborhood with the good bars and the fun people who are hanging out, but you don't know how to find it. And I think this is the problem with the current internet. The metaphor of surfing implied motion. The metaphor of platforms implies standing still. If we accept that community is the heart of the internet, how do we empower people to find the vibrant neighbors and neighborhoods where their kindred spirits are hanging out? You only get somewhere when you leave the station. How do we give them a map out of there? And so here's what I want you to go away and do. I want you to build something, anything, small, personal, weird, yours. I want you to teach someone, one person in your life, how to make something online. I want you to take back control of your feeds and your attention. And I want you to go exploring again outside those algorithmically curated doom loops. The internet is still out there, just outside the walls. It doesn't need to be corporate and addictive and rage-inducing. It can be weird and personal and genuinely social again. Let's reclaim it together. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you. That was really fun. I want to spend the rest of the afternoon watching fan binding videos. I think that might be how I spend my night. But we do only have 10 minutes. Where's our time? Oh, shoot. Only 9 minutes 41. It's like an iPad ad. So like a good YouTube video, let's get straight into it. I want to talk about discovery. You talked about your Lego modular streetscape website.
Yeah.
How did you enable the discovery of that website to the point where it could win an award?
Yeah, great question. I made it just for me. I didn't imagine that anyone else would find it useful. It's a pretty niche subculture of people who have a Lego city big enough that they can't just rearrange the buildings without a plan. But I did know that subculture existed, and I found it on Reddit in our Lego display. So I knew that that there would be at least one other person who would be keen, and I shared it there, and it turned out lots of people were. So yeah, it's been strangely successful, that little site.
Incredible. And do you know how the Tiny Award people found it? Are they also members of this subcommunity?
You nominate sites for a Tiny Award, so I assume that somebody did.
I love it. So I guess in the same vein, you talked about homepages. It was quite crazy to see how great the extra homepage, I think, still stands up. But we did used to start with a homepage and then follow links and kind of go from site to site, and there was a lot of joy in that journey and almost like the recounting your journey to people, how ridiculous it was, all of the sites you traversed in order to find something fun. In your newsletter, you share a bunch of links every week. Do you think a newsletter is a better form for today's internet than a cool links section on your website?
Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, I think email newsletters are where we've wound up because we lost blogs somewhere along the way. And I think email newsletters replace the, RIP Google Reader, and it's a way to get the writers that you enjoy hearing from straight in your inbox, which seems to work for a lot of people. But I think that the challenge with email newsletters, and what I'm already finding frustrating about it, is we've lost that bidirectional link, right? Like the World Wide Web was all about linking and linking back. And so, as soon as you went somewhere, you had the ability to go somewhere else. And I do think that an email newsletter is not that.
Yeah, right. By the way, I'm a subscriber to your newsletter. I hear from my children that it makes me more fun at parties.
Oh, good. Okay.
Do you think that this weird web, this small web, the good internet, could bring back more links so that websites, these fun little websites, didn't feel like the end of the road?
Yeah, because I think at the moment what's happening is we think of the internet as being this handful of platforms. And so when you want to share someone with something, you wind up sending them a link to a TikTok. You're like, hey, check out this fun video. But that's a dead end, right? That doesn't go anywhere. They might forward it on to someone else. Whereas I think the joy of the early web was that there was always something new or interesting to share with someone else. And my concern is now that search is really fundamentally broken, we have to find a new way to approach discovery because, if Google is going to tell us to eat glue and rocks, we're never going to find the good parts of the web.
This is maybe a great segue if you think about discovery. If you send someone a link to TikTok, maybe it's the end of the road, or maybe it's the rest of their night through scrolling.
More likely the rest of their night.
You talked about feed and managing your feed, being able to take control of your feed. How have you curated your feed, and what's that experience been like?
Yeah, well, I think for the last few years, it literally hasn't been possible, right? I mean, we had a brief window with social media where we could insist on a reverse chronological feed of the people we had chosen to follow, and I was very religious about that. On old Twitter, I capped myself at 200 people, and if I wanted to follow someone new, I had to boot someone off. And so I was only ever seeing exactly what I wanted to see, and it's so hard to recreate that on any of the traditional platforms now. They are determined to dictate what it is that you're seeing. And I think in the early internet, we would say to young people, you should curate your feed, you should be careful about who it is that you're following. You can't do that now. You can't curate your TikTok. So that's why I'm interested in AT Proto and what Blue Sky is doing, because I think there is now the infrastructure that you can design your own experience online, and I think that's really powerful, not just for individual consumption, but for how we create community groups around things as well.
Right, and so in terms of building up your feed, I think you mentioned a bit of a marketplace. Do you kind of go to the marketplace and add a few different feeds to your cart and
So
bring them into your home?
there's two different things going on. On Blue Sky, you can browse feeds and subscribe to them. When I was mentioning the marketplace, that's just a new way that Graze is thinking about advertising. So at the moment, Blue Sky doesn't have any advertising, and I think most people are very in favor of that. Graze's thesis is curators are doing a lot of work to put these big community feeds together with tens of thousands of subscribers. What if an advertiser wants to put some sponsored posts into that feed? Who should get paid? Well, not Blue Sky and not Graze. It should be the feed curator who's done the work. And they're the one who then gets to decide how frequently does that post pop up, how many ads will I accept, and that's all going to be community driven, because it's like you know that your users are not going to want to see an ad every 2 posts or they're going to unsubscribe.
Right. Okay, and so in terms of your exploration of the internet, and I'm going to adapt an audience question, going off script. Is the feed where your internet experience starts, or do you use other sites? Do you have a homepage of links of your own that you start from? How do you begin?
Yeah, I don't. And I think as Twitter degraded, I was acutely aware that that's what I was missing. You know, for a long time, my Twitter feed gave me a great start to the day with interesting links, interesting bits of news, and it was a good place to start. That's not true anymore. And it has caused me to think differently about how you begin your day so that it's not a true dumpster fire. And I think that we're going to have to experiment with some different ways of approaching that.
Yeah, I think I sort of lost that with Google Reader's demise, where I then lost a whole community of websites that I used to visit, and every now and then I realize I should not start my day with news sites.
No. And it's interesting because I think everybody approaches it differently. I had lunch with a friend yesterday who said he reads my newsletter just in the archive because email's busted for him. He's like, I'm never going to read it in my inbox. And he said, an RSS feed of the website is much more helpful to him. So I think everybody's trying to solve the same problem in different ways.
Maybe RSS will come back with a vengeance. You talked about transformative fandom, and you talked about publishing, and about, I forget the name of the exodus from live journal and such, strike through. So AO3, obviously, now removed from commercial pressures, or some of the commercial pressures, advertising and such. But how do they deal with how easy it is to send a DMCA takedown letter? How are they protecting fan works?
Yeah, so AO3 is run by the Organisation for Transformative Works, and that nonprofit, their purpose is basically to do exactly that, to defend transformative works against the possibility of legal threats or complaints. And, there's a lot of legalese around what's fair use with IP and what you can and can't do. But the whole purpose of the organisation that runs that site is to protect fan works.
Okay. And people are working for that as lawyers?
Yeah.
Free? Okay. Oh, cool. It's nice to see lawyers doing some good. You also mentioned Usenet, and I think the early internet felt like this ungoverned space. I think we're probably quite surprised when owners of IP turned up and suddenly were there as well. It felt like a really well kept secret. So we moved from Usenet to platforms, obviously more features, things that could go on, but we gave up that ungovernedness. Now we're sort of putting some of that into community-owned platforms, but also, how would you describe Blue Sky? Is Blue Sky community-owned, or is it just a benevolent platform? And are we safe in this new spot?
I mean, Blue Sky spends a lot of time saying that they're building billionaire-proof social media, and then people from Mastodon say, no, you're not, and it turns into a nerd fight that nobody cares about. The simple answer is they're building it on infrastructure that means that if you were unhappy with Blue Sky, you could shift to another application built on the same protocol and take your posting history, your followers, everything you've done, your neighborhoods with you. So it's about as billionaire-proof as yes, it can be.
So as long as they keep that kind of open license for your content, then you can move on. Well, that sounds quite cool. I said I was going to keep us to time. Our timer's ran out. Where do we find you online?
Oh, sure. I had my site up at the start, sashajudd.com, and I will be posting all of these slides and the transcript and the links to my sources. I'll put a link on Blue Sky this afternoon, and you'll be able to find it on my site.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your stories and your insight with us today. A personal story on the way here. On the way to the Auckland airport yesterday, the big main freight sign on the side of the motorway read, "Spend time with people who inspire you." So thank you very much for helping us all to do exactly that.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.